Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick video to have a look at one of the latest devices from ViFly. This happens to be the Toothstor. This is a 4-port 2S charger designed for those of you that like to fly whoops and stuff that takes a lot of those 2S batteries. Now I happen to be a fan of the ViFly stuff, and I've reached behind me before I start this video to pick out two of the pieces that I still have in my own personal setup, and these are these two pieces here. This is something called the ViFly Whoop series board. Allows you to plug in single individual cells and then select the individual cell count, protected by a little fuse in case you do something wrong, and you plug it into your conventional charger via the balance tap and an XT60, and that is actually really good. There's no real cleverness in here. It's just a way to connect batteries in series, really, to create a virtual series pack. This has been really useful. I use this a lot for the 1S stuff. Something I use less often, but I've definitely kept in my arsenal, is this thing here. This is the ViFly Toothstor. This is, again, 1S cells, and again, it has all of the same stuff on it. You have the ability to change the target voltage from 4.2 to 4.35 for the HV setups, and a button to kind of start and stop it, as well as set your current. This was powered from a DC power supply, but also via a kind of power distribution PD3 setup using a USB-C connection. Both of these are still behind me in my regular charging stuff. So I was fascinated to see that they brought out a new version of their little chargers for these kind of things. Now again, this is a 4-port 2S balance charger that does include storage mode. I'll power it up and you can see it for a minute. And you can balance charge 4 2S batteries at the same time. It's 4 independent charging channels, and you can see the status of each of those on the colourful LCD display that you have by the side. It does support XH 2.54, which are basically the balanced style of connector that you get on most batteries. They will plug into either this port, or the other one is very common these days, which is your kind of BT 3.0 connections. There are no other adapters or stuff in the box, so if you want those kind of other connectors, you're going to have to get some adapters. Don't forget that you can only put one battery on each side, so if you plug in something into the balance port, you can't then plug in a battery into the same port in the BT 3.0 connector. Good heat dissipation here. In the old days when they started making this stuff, they just used to use the sides. That's a big heat sink at the bottom for the storage charge. Not sure if the camera's picking that up. The latest version of this Toothstor is actually more enclosed, and it looks more like this Toothstor version. But you can see here there is a massive amount of room in here, and also a cooling fan at the end. Now playing with it here, it's not getting particularly loud, and that fan isn't too distracting, but it's nice to know that if things do get a little bit hot, it can try and keep itself nice and cool. Same kind of multiple inputs on here as we had with the other version that we've had a look at. So again, you have multiple inputs, so you've got Type C, XT60 and a DC power input. 65 watts irrespective of what you plug it into, so long as your Type C PD 3.0 port, it can handle that. It does have a memory function, so when you plug it back in, it will remember what it was set to last time. That's quite nice. You don't have to set everything up from scratch. And there is also a nice beeper and buzzer in here to let you know when things have finished, which I think is really important. Dimensions on this are 109 by 56 by 30 millimeters. Weight of it is 142 grams. Input connectors again are XT60 or a DC 5.5 by 2.1 millimeter jack plug, or USB-C, which runs the PD 3.0 power standard. Input voltage range is 10 to 26 volts, so that's really your kind of 3 to 6S if you're going to run it from a LiPo battery. And the minimum input power you're going to need to run this is going to be 65 watts, and the maximum charging current is 1.5 amps per port. Battery connectors again are the balance tap or XH 2.54, 3-pin or BT 3.0, and it will support lithium high voltage and LiPo. It will allow you to do storage voltage, which is 3.8 or 3.85 volts per cell, and it will also allow you to discharge them as well, but only 0.2 of an amps per port, with 0.2 of an amp for the balance current. So let me plug it into a DC power supply and run it. I'm going to use one of these big packs. These are the kind of packs that I tend to use these for when I'm at the field. Just plug this in, it's going to power up, and it'll tell you that it's version 1 of the firmware. Can't see any way to update the firmware, sadly. Maybe that's a feature that I just haven't come across yet. On the screen here, hopefully you can see this is a little bit of an eye test. There are only 2 buttons. The small one lets you change the current, and it's the current for all of these. This is one of the disadvantages with this. You kind of have to set global parameters rather than for each port. So it's not like a big smart 4-port battery charger. It just happens to have 4 ports but one lot of settings. So as I click this button here, 0.5 amps, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 amps is the maximum. Press it again, it goes to the minimum, which is 0.2 amps, which is a 200 milliamp battery. Other thing you can do here by clicking this one is you can change the voltage. Only 4 options here. So we have 3.8 or 3.85 volts if you want to do a discharge cycle, or 4.2 volts or 4.35. Those are the only 4 options. I know something that I get asked a lot when I do these reviews is what voltages can you set it to? I'm making a point of covering it here. So unfortunately, if you just want to leave it at 4 volts, so it's kind of halfway between, so it's a quicker charge, unfortunately you can't do that with this. But those settings are global. Now to start it, we press and hold the left hand button. To turn the beep on and off, we press and hold the right hand button. Just kind of give you an idea of that. It's actually got it printed. So let's use it in anger. Let's plug in a couple of 2S batteries. This one is a 450. We'll stick it in that port. This one's a 750 2S. We'll stick it in the port in the corner. We'll stick in another 750 down here. There we go, that's 3 batteries connected. And now with those 3 batteries plugged in, we can see that it's actually reading the individual cells and the overall pack voltage. So I've set it for 0.2 amps. Let's increase that to 0.4 because the smallest battery I've got is a 450. We'll set it to a nice storage charge and press and hold it, and off it goes. Now once it starts working, you'll hear the confirmation beep. Now this pack at the bottom here is a little bit low. It could do with being brought up a little bit. It obviously flew a little bit hard the last time it was used. And you can hear the fan isn't running either. But it's nice to see on the screen that you've got the individual cell voltages, the status, how many milliamp hours, and at the top you can have a quick glance at what the actual individual settings are. But you can see here that what we've got is we've got battery 3 is charging. It's charged at 0.4 of an amp and 4 milliamp hours have gone into it. The one above it in output 1 is a little bit high because we've set 3.8 as the target voltage. It's actually a little above that, and it's pulling out 200 milliamps or 0.2 of an amp, and it's pulled out 2 milliamps. And you can just leave it to run like this. Now there are quite a lot of things that I like about this. I like the fact that this is a really handy, cute field charger that you can keep in your bag, and if you're flying lots of 2S and you have a nice chunky battery that you can power it from, or you've got access to a nice PD3 power supply, you're set. I do like the way it's also able to charge and discharge packs. It means you can put things back to storage after a flight and look after them and keep them nice and safe. They will last you longer if you store your batteries at a storage charge. Screen is a bit of an eye test, but actually not too tricky to read at all. I can read it easily. I do need glasses for reading a book, but the backlight is nice. There isn't any system menu that I can find. There probably is a secret one. If I find it, I'll put a note down below to allow you to change things like the battery voltage and stuff, and also the cutoff for the DC input power supply. And it is only set for 2S. It's a shame there aren't little adapters that go into the 2S socket that would allow you to plug in a couple of 1S batteries. That would have made it really handy, because then you could have one charger and it could do the job of this at the field, and it could also do the job of this thing at the field as well, and you can get a 2-for-1. You can easily make up your own adapters if you really wanted to be able to do that, to make this a little bit more useful. There we are, it's just beeped. One of them is finished, so the battery one has just got down to the target voltage. There's also auto protection of the input battery. By default, that's set to one lot of levels. Again, you can't get into it to change those. It'll 3.5 volts, it'll turn the LCD off to conserve the battery, and then at 3.3 it'll power off. I would have liked to have been able to access some kind of system menu with this, maybe by pressing and holding both of these buttons to get into it, to kind of play with that stuff. So things to be aware of. Well, there's a couple that don't forget is one current setting for all of the ports. So all of the batteries are going to get the same current and the same target voltage. You can't set one for discharge, one for charge, have 0.7 of an amp over here and this one be discharging or something else. Only BT 3.0 and balanced tap style connectors, 3 to 6S input voltage, so no 2S. It's got to be a 3S battery if you're going to do this at the field. I tend to run most of them off 4S, and no change to change that cutoff if you're going to power it from a LiPo battery or something else. Limited options for the target voltage as well. They've only got those 4 that I've just shown, so that's really 2 options for your storage voltage and 2 options for your fully charged. I would have liked there to be some more increments, maybe a couple in between. And also it is saying the firmware is version 1.0. I'd have liked the option to have some kind of firmware update or change. I'm sure as they went on, they could have added some of these features via a firmware addition. So in summary, this is a really nice addition and another great little device from ViFly. They really seem to have us covered if you fly lots of whoops and toothpick style stuff, particularly now if you're flying either 1S with these older existing units, or now if you're flying 2S with this. I would personally just use this and maybe make up a couple of adapters so that you could plug in 1S boards into one of these ports in a series, and then that way you could have the best of both worlds. Thank you for watching my video. Check out the playlist, and adding Pedantry 60 to your search terms will help you find my content. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. You can support the time I spend here answering questions and helping others by using the links in the video description.